Blog Talk Radio.
He took an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States of America. By some, he's been called controversial.
I'll keep my freedom, I'll keep my guns, try to keep my money and my religion too. Now, keep in mind that some of my guests have been approached by Homeland Security or FBI saying, why are you going on the Clay Douglas show?
My message to those guys, if they're listening this morning, is go get a cup of coffee. Maybe you'll learn something.
We both took the same oath, to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I don't recall there being an expiration date on that. I'm going to keep my big VA, keep my friends the same, keep the government out of my business, and y'all can keep the change.
He is the free American, Clay Douglas.
We know what we need. We know who to blame.
Catch the Free American Hour, weekdays at 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern.
I'll keep the USA and y'all can keep the change.
For the podcast and more details, visit www.freeamerican.com or catch the podcast by phone by calling 832-999-8621.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Free American Hour. I am your host. I am Clay Douglas. My guest today is a very dear and old friend, PaulPantone1. He is the creator of the GEET system, which you should be running on your cars, running on your generators, and we're going to be talking about that and everything's going. Hello, Paul. How are you?
Well, fine. How are you, Clay?
I'm doing well. I've been talking with Paul about what we can do. We've been fighting these power companies for years. You've been threatened. You've been put in an insane asylum by these people. I've listened to the recordings from the people from the oil companies that called and threatened you. This has all happened, hasn't it, Paul?
It sure has. It's been interesting in the last 30-some years.
Now, the plan that Paul and I have been talking about, I basically fomented this about 10 years ago. I had a town. I had a half of a town, the only two-house town still left on the map in New Mexico. It's called Bingham, New Mexico. I owned the north half, and I wanted to do something out there. It used to be a store. There was a lot of traffic, and I wanted to do something. So I conceived a plan for something called Liberty Villages, and what I wanted to do. And you know about this, Paul. I mean, we talked about this. I had it on the centerfold of my magazines right before they tried to kill me, and I suggested that if we all live together, work together in small houses, tiny Texas houses, cabins like they used to have in the old days, and we didn't really need 2,000 square feet, and we could basically power those smaller homes, teepees, yurts, tents, mud huts, with the wind and the sun, everything that God gave us. We can produce our own fuel by growing hemp or corn. And if we produce our own food and our own energy, we don't need the bankers for much, do we?
No, not much at all.
And maybe this is the reason they tried to kill me, but I have firmly held the conviction that, as Richard Kelly Hoskins said, the basis of every foundation was built on the self-sufficient family farm. And in this 21st century, with people like you who have created carburation like GEET for our gasoline engines, we are shaking their control. They want you going to that gas station. They want you going to that pharmacy. They want you going to that grocery store. They want you to continue to consume. And folks, it's about to get a lot worse. And let me just set the stage for this, Paul, and then I'm going to kind of let you talk since you are my guest today.
Go ahead. You're doing a good job.
In the early spring this year, U.S. farmers were on their way to planting some 96 million acres in corn, the most in 75 years. A warm early spring got the crop off to a great start. Analysts were predicting the largest corn harvest on record. The United States is the leading producer and exporter of corn, the world's feed grain. At home, corn accounts for 4/5 of the U.S. grain production. Internationally, the U.S. corn crop exceeds China's rice and wheat harvest combined. Among the three big grains, corn, wheat, and rice, corn is now the leader. The production is well above that of wheat and nearly double that of rice. Of course, they're not telling you and not talking about the hemp crops, which are grown in all the communist countries everywhere but the United States, land of the free and home of the brave. The corn plant is as sensitive as it is productive, thirsty, and fast-growing. It's vulnerable to both extreme heat and drought. At elevated temperatures, the corn plant, which is normally so productive, goes into thermal shock. As spring turned into summer, the thermometer began to rise across the corn belt in St. Louis, Missouri. The southern corn belt, the temperature in late June and early July climbed to 100 degrees Fahrenheit or higher 10 days in a row. The corn belt has been blanketed with dehydrating heat. And folks, now on May 21st, 77% of the corn crop was rated as good to excellent. The following week, the share of the crop has dropped to 72%. Over the last 8 weeks, it dropped to 26%, one of the lowest ratings on record. And the crop is still deteriorating. They are planning on starving you to death as soon as the trucks stop running because they can't afford the gas, as soon as the crops stop growing because they've been subjected to floods or heat. Thank you, Harp. What do we do, Paul? The only answer I've gotten over the last 20 years of studying is you downsize, you staff. Anytime a communist country takes over, they go after the three classes of people in order. The first one is the farmers, the second one is the intelligentsia, anyone smart enough to know what they're trying to pull, and third, they go after the veterans and the police officers that might be loyal to the old regime, and that would be you oath keepers out there. Paul, I've set the stage for here. I think we have an answer, and you have suggested making some moves. Now, I've talked to people that said about Liberty Villages. Well, I don't know if I want to. I don't know if I want to live with a bunch of people, and these are usually coming from people living in a neighborhood with a bunch of people. They just don't talk to their neighbors. They're afraid to talk to their neighbors because their neighbors might not agree with their point of view. In Liberty Villages, it would be an open society where people like you, where people like Dr. Jake Wade, where people like me could come and talk to the people there, educate the people there, and, hey, have a good meal like I used to get when I went to my grandmother because she always had a victory garden. Take over, Paul.
I'll give you done great so far. I've been in most of the states now. I've not been to Alaska yet, but in most states, education, in this field especially, trying to teach people how to have better mileage and how to feed themselves better and grow crops. Most people don't even want to hear it. They want to go to TV, turn it on, and watch sports. It's real hard. You've got other people in that upper class where they have their fancy motorhomes and all that. All they want to do is keep driving and visiting places and spending their money. They don't seem to care that they're only getting 4 or 6 miles to the gallon. It's mind-boggling. Yet when you get up in the hills, the people who know how to live off the land would like to do it more efficiently all the time, but there aren't many of those left. They've been pushed into cities. I'm in one of the few spots here in Oklahoma where there's no building department to talk to. You don't need a building permit. There's no zoning. You want to build something, go ahead and build it. Now, I forgot what that was like when I was in California. You couldn't change a door in a house without a permit.
That's more of the communist-style control.
Yeah. So all over the country, we had different problems and different things. The state of California and a few others said, well, we don't want people putting the GEET on our cars because that would give them double or triple mileage and it's against the law. Finally, I've been doing this for 34 years, finally somebody sent me a copy about 2 years ago of the 1951 National Secrecy Act, or National Security Act, and it says you're not going to be able to sell a car if it has more than a certain amount of efficiency. You can't sell a solar panel if it's more than 20% efficient in this country. So you can go to Israel and buy one that's got 40% efficiency, but you can't bring it here. The government wants us to use this oil.
They
all
also
about big money.
They also, that National Security Act, that covers something else too. That's always been a puzzle to me. You can't build a magnetic generator, and you and I know you absolutely can. It would generate more electricity than a solar panel or anything else, but as soon as you plugged it into the system, they would come out and bust you, rather than have to pay you $500 a month to buy the electricity from you.
You got it. So I tell people, only build what you need for your own use. You can still buy plans from us, or if you want to be a dealer, you can come in and be trained. But if you know how to do all of those things, it's illegal to market them, but it's not illegal to teach it.
Well, that is why I have a little bit of pull here, because one of the people that's involved and who is going to do any of the corporation and grants that we need is Dr. Jake Wade. He's the Dean of Timothy Bible College. He's the Dean of the and the creator of the Little Red Schoolhouse. This is homeschooling. And Lynn's son, Harling, is going to be he's going to be going to school, 7th grade, in the Little Red Schoolhouse. So wherever we go, wherever we end up, wherever we are, he'll be able to attend school.
You hit one here that hits a sore spot with me.
Okay.
I catch a lot of my news on Before It's News, and they've got pretty good updates about every 20 minutes, sometimes sooner. And if you see a story, print it, because it won't be there in an hour. A lot of them get pulled down immediately. But there was one about homeschoolers that were being harassed, I think it was in New York area, where the feds came in starting to do inspections on homeschools because they're considered schools. And not have drugs, alcohol, but firearms here at school.
Well, this is another privacy issue, and Jake's pretty well dealt with that. I mean, at least they're in Texas, and you know, this is going to be this is our private communication. You know, now I'm really fond of Skype. We're doing the show just like I do a conversation on Skype. So the classes for Timothy Bible College will be held on Skype. You'll have a teacher to a standard number of students, probably not as many as a large classroom, so they can the students can get hands-on thing. It's a good way to go. And then the kids go out into the common area or the garden, pull a few weeds, pick a few eggs, and they are going to get to learn how we've existed, how mankind has existed for 10,000 years before iPods and computers.
We used to have a lot of power outages in California there when we lived close together there at Clay. And it was funny to me because all these gals, I'm 62 now, but these gals would come over, and when I was single, they'd see me baking bread, and they'd see me making home-cooked meals, and they didn't know how to cook. Everything comes out of a box, goes in the microwave, and that's it. When the power's out, they starve. It's amazing. The number of people that do know, they don't know how to cook. They don't know how to do anything.
I got some eggs. I've got some eggs. I'm one of those, Paul. I got some eggs sitting in there I don't quite know what to do with. I think I'm going to dump them into a neighbor's pan and make boiled eggs out of them. But but
we're in the country out here. We have wild boar. We have the deer go through the yard every morning. And we've got raccoons that live somewhere on our property here. It's 160 acres. And there's a lot of property in this area that's reasonably priced. So setting up a village like you're talking, that wouldn't be a problem. There's plenty of people here that they just would rather stay home on welfare than working.
Well, even if they're on welfare or Social Security, and I'm on Social Security because, and it's a good thing I had my accident close enough to my age that I was able to qualify for it, or I'd be living under a bridge right now, not doing this radio show, because they have tried to break me financially. I mean, I've had some of my companies that I've had over the years sold for $500,000, and I still retained half of it. That would have given me all the operating capital I needed. We signed a deal on Thursday. On Friday, they put a press release out on Wall Street. On Monday, I walked in, and the CEO is white and shaking. They're threatening to impeach me. They're threatening my stock's crashing like a rock. If I do the deal with you, I'm going to lose everything.
Well, when I was in Utah, I managed to be a millionaire for the third time, and all of a sudden you get grabbed in the courtroom. They say, you're delusional. You can't run an engine on Mountain Dew and pickle juice, so we're going to throw you in the wheel bin, and we'll give you a 3-month evaluation. And you never get to see daylight for 3.5 years. They torture you, and they say, only thing they wanted from me was sign the patent over. Well, if it doesn't work, why do you want the patent? That's always been my basic question. And no, I didn't sign the patent over. It's still mine.
All right, if we set up a village on an adjacent 160 acres next to you,
yeah,
and even if you're on welfare, folks, I mean, here, let me just see if this is all breaking right now. It's happening right now. We've been telling you about it for 20 years. We've been telling you what the Federal Reserve is. This whole Libor scandal over there, the banker bailouts here, the end of Fed, people are starting to wake up that this whole banking thing is a scam. They want to loan you the money. You know, they'll be glad to loan you the money to buy your house. You'll pay for that house 3 times. How about if you did this? How about if you were making the same money that you're making today, whether it's on Social Security or whatever, and instead of paying for that 2,000 square foot house 3 times, take a smaller structure. Do a cabin, do a tent, do a teepee, do a yurt, do a adobe home. There's 2 classes of people that live in adobe homes, folks. The very poor and the very rich. But we've got plans set up so we can do salvage, set up a salvage company, go in, tear down old buildings and rebuild. That's what's happening with Tiny Texas Houses. Tiny Texas Houses would be a part of this Liberty Village chain. Liberty Village will be a complete covenant community that you could initiate in your own square block. Put a GEET generator on a GEET power generator in your garage or out behind your house, emergency power. Put wood chips on the backyard. You don't have to plow the fields. Just put wood chips and it'll grow anything. It'll retain the moisture. It'll solve the drought problem. And you can grow your own food. And if everybody was growing their own food and generating their own energy, folks, and that's kind of the goal here. And that's what you started with GEET. I mean, we can go twice as many places for half the cost.
Yep.
I see.
It's not just GEET. I teach a lot more than that here. We teach people how to pull electricity out of the air and out of the ground, and we show them a lot of things that have been lost over the years. With the 1951 National Secrecy Act, about 5,000 inventors every year never get to the marketplace. They're just shut down. And a lot of people see these things on TV where, oh, this guy's putting up $100 million or $1 billion for the best technology. No, it's just a way of finding the guys that have good technology and getting them to come forward, thinking you're going to make a lot of money, and you disappear.
It's happened to all the people that now water power. I've just let me ask you about this, Paul. I've said if we really had it together, all we'd have to do is take one of those tankers, one of those ocean liners, convert the motor so they'll run on hydrogen. And you're floating on hydrogen. Open a little valve, and bring the seawater into your converter and convert the seawater, and you don't have to pay the oil companies billions of dollars for fuel to transport goods overseas. Now, am I living in a fantasy land here, or is that possible?
Yeah, you are there. Because none of the countries will let you come into their docks. Singapore said they'll do that with us. They have no problem. Pakistan said they don't mind using water as a fuel. But I can't find any other countries where the people don't have that control by the government. We're keeping it down.
When we were together at the Tesla convention in Dallas, and I thought it was pretty interesting. Everybody talked about it, but nobody had a magnetic generator there, and they were all afraid. They said they would the feds would come in and bust them if they demonstrated that they could build one of those.
Yep. I've heard that many times right from the feds. Do not build your best unit. Do not build anything that's more than 50% efficient. Nothing can be sold to the public that's more than 50% efficient, or you're going to endanger the oil companies.
So the oil company, now Thomas Jefferson warned us over 200 years ago, if you ever allow the banks to issue your money, the banks and the corporations that spring up around them will leave your children homeless in the land that we conquered. These people, these bankers, have trillions of dollars stashed overseas. They fund the oil companies. They fund the sheiks. And they're stashing your money away. They're turning this country now into another whole, you got a whole another set of refugees here. You've got a whole another set of homeless. The poor in America it's growing like a cancer, folks. I mean, and it's multiplying rapidly, and it's like they pointed out, you know, the poor are simply the people these guys, the banksters, the elite, have already ripped off.
Yep.
So, and if your own Charlie Reese, I just read a thing on this that he said the problem all lays at the hands of 545 people, the 9 Supreme Court justices, the 345 people in Congress, 100 people in the Senate. You know, they're the ones that are responsible. They have sold us out because they work for the bankers, and the bankers own the oil companies, and they own the media companies. And you're never going to solve it by an election, folks. There ain't going to be no election. You saw what happened to Ron Paul. You saw what happened to Charles Collins. I saw what happened to Charles Collins. You never knew about him, so you can't vote for anybody you don't know about. They control all of the media, and they brag about it. I mean, Jews own the media. Yeah, we work for the banks. We work for the banks. And we don't care about the other people because the Kol Nidre, you know, we don't have to honor anything for the Gentiles do. So they really made us Gentiles, us Aryans, us into the bad guys. You know, like all Germans are Nazis and all Arabs are terrorists, right? This is the programming. This is the programming that you're given to keep you in line. And before we had television, and before we had the media, we had the Catholic Church. You're allowed to read the Bible, but hey, believe whatever the priest tells you. Be sure and bring your kids.
Yeah. So we thought we had freedom in the church groups there. But when I was touring the country, we stopped at the Baptist College in Cedarville, Ohio, and they were so excited they wanted to teach this. And just a few days later, they let me know, I'm sorry, but we would lose all of our government sponsorship. We'd lose our accreditation. We'll lose everything if we teach what you have in our classroom. Now, I get that from all the other churches, too, that came to the table wanting to teach it. And one after another, they all said, I'm sorry, we can't teach it. We can only tell the public what we're told we can.
This is
we can only teach what we're told.
This is the problem with the 501c3 corporations. Now, you had mentioned something about that. we can do that. I mean, we can't. I've had corporations. It ain't no big thing. Dr. Wade can certainly fill out the paperwork for it, and also apply for grants if we just deal with the farming and the village. The technology that you're teaching, the GEET, I would simply incorporate into classes under Timothy Bible College and try to insulate that. And then your dealers are simply working on their own, but they would have a nationwide legal backing to be able to keep them going in their particular areas, wouldn't they?
Yeah, we've got a couple of dealers that crossed that line, and they put things up on YouTube. One of them, we told him, you cannot talk about for any reason more than a 50% increase. So he went and put it up on YouTube that he was getting 19, and he said, since Paul won't let me talk more than 50%, I'm not going to tell you what my mileage went to, I'm going to show you. So then he hands the camera onto the dash, and it says 68. I'm sorry, folks, that's a no-no. 50% is all you're allowed to get. So we do teach people how to detune them, so they only get 50%.
But
that's what he said, yeah.
Installing a GEET unit, you basically double your money, don't you?
Well, it depends on how much driving you do.
Well, at least you're cutting your expenses in half.
Yeah.
Or 45%.
Yeah, you don't want to cut it too deep, or then they get upset.
Now
they want what's in your wallet, and they want it every month.
The whole idea for Liberty Villages, you know, A, low-cost structure, B, you're generating your own power. Now, what about the solar? Can we improve our solar panels? I want each Liberty Village, I want to have a barn or a factory in each Liberty Village, and I want them to be able to build windmills and solar units. I mean, what are we talking about? Sand? What's the main ingredient in sand in solar panels? Is it sand? Should that cost us $5,000 for a solar unit?
Well, when the government has a law that says you cannot have one that's more than 20% efficient, that's when you have to really look at, is solar really the way to go? Wouldn't it make more sense just to pull the electricity out of the air? And those plans are up all over the internet, different methods of doing it. And you can pull it right out of the ground. So they have a very basic system. You don't have to have 120 volts for everything. You can get by with a 12-volt system.
Pulling electricity out of the air. We've got we're approaching the end of this first half of the show, and by the way, folks, if you go to my website, freeamerican.com, I've got some information up there about the Liberty Villages, and it's time. It may be past time. We've all been fairly comfortable. I've been sitting back, and you sit back and you go, well, yeah, that was a good idea. That was a good idea. The article I just sent you, Paul, is up on. It says why we need to move now to create Liberty Villages, and this whole drought thing is simply another attack on the farmers, and we got to figure out ways to do that. Part of that is kind of covered on my website. If you're putting the wood chips on your lawn, and that's keeping the moisture in, and it's protecting the soil, not destroying the soil like you get when you plow. But if you go to the website, it says you got the picture of the Liberty Villages, cabins, teepees, and yurts up there. It says, I am now taking applications for people that want to live a self-sufficient lifestyle with others of their own kind and race. And I don't care what your kind or race is. You want a Mexican village? No problem, man. I'll come there every Friday or Saturday for tacos. These villages are a commercial venture. It requires a little capital for low-cost housing. The housing that is available changes from area to area.